Good afternoon, council and staff. May I have a mover and seconder to call the meeting to order, please? Councilors Garwood and Moore, that the special meeting of the Council of Township of December 3rd come to order at 3 p.m. All those in favor? And that has carried. Councilor, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest this evening? And not seeing any, I will turn over to Director Bedard for our budget update.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and good afternoon, Council. While we're waiting for there we go. Here's my slideshow coming up. So if we move to the next slide, the agenda for today is we'll give a proposed base budget recap of where we stand after the direction given during our last meeting on November 27th. We'll move into the potential reduction to OPP costs, and I'll explain the potential impact that will have on the township's 2025 budget. And then lastly, we'll move into the items for consideration that are remaining from the previous meeting. Mayor Coughlin, with your indulgence, each section is prepared on its own again. If we could, after I present each section, wrap up any questions on that before we move on to the next one. Next slide, please. All right, so starting with our 2025 proposed base budget recap. On the next slide, it shows where we started on November 26, 2024, and where we currently stand today based on decisions and direction given on November 27th. So the items in red are the changes that were made based on direction during last meeting. So there's been changes to general operating, the 1% infrastructure levy, the investment in capital funded from taxation, and changes to our service partners based budget. The net reduction is approximately 1.5 million. So we've gone from a base budget of 2.8 million to a base budget of just over 1.2 million. Next slide, please. The next three slides will detail the changes that were mentioned above as of November 27th. So there was no change to labor. The one change to general operating is the tax reduction of approximately 118,000, and this is to adjust our OMPF revenues to actuals expected. Previously, I had rounded that to 115,000 for simplicity. The actual is a little higher than that. The last change on this slide is the removal of the compounding effect of the 1% infrastructure levy. Removing the compounding effect reduces the tax levy by approximately 190,000. Next slide, please. The most significant change as a result of November 27th was the reduction in investment in capital funded from taxation. This resulted in a tax reduction of approximately 1.2 million. Listed on this slide are 4 roads projects that were removed from the 2025 budget. The Arena Zamboni concrete pad, which was removed from the 2025 budget, and the reduction in scope of the facility condition assessment program. These are the 6 programs or projects in the 2025 budget that were removed that were funded from property taxation. There are a number of other projects such as the 3/4 ton truck, the Phelpston Rink Pavilion, fire dispatch software, and robotic mowers that were removed from the capital budget. However, these were funded from reserves or another source of funding that wasn't taxation. So these projects have no bearing on the tax levy for 2025. Next slide, please. The last slide here with respect to direction given on November 27th is outlining the service partner change. So this shows a tax reduction of approximately 30,000, and this was to remove the NVCA category 2 and 3 costs, as well as the asset management plan costs. There was also no change to assessment growth. Next slide, please. So as of the changes made November 27th, this slide details the impact on the average residential taxpayer. So again, this is our starting point for discussions today. So based on direction council provided on November 27th, the tax rate would be 4.26% blended increase for an increase in taxes payable of $188. So again, this was the information that council requested to be prepared at the end of last budget meeting. Again, this is just our starting point for discussions today. Next slide, please. And just to bring forward the impact on water and wastewater, there's been no changes to this. It's just so that all the information is available in one spot. And again, this slide indicates the average water bill will go up by 4% and the average annual wastewater bill will go up by 10%, representing an increase of $128 over last year. And again, this this slide only impacts those that are provided with water and wastewater services. And with that, this concludes my update on our base budget position as of November 27th.
Thank you, Director Bedard. Are there any comments or questions on this section? Not seeing any, we can continue.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Moving to the potential reduction to OPP costs. Next slide, please. So late last week, the Ontario government proposed providing financial relief to offset the increased costs of municipal policing services provided by the OPP. There were three ways that the provincial government proposed to mitigate the increase in 2025. So there was a reduction on 2023 total reconciled costs, a reduction on 2023 reconciled overtime costs, as well as a reduction on invoiced amounts for 2025 policing costs. We have yet to receive the amended 2025 annual billing statement reflecting the proposed financial relief that is being provided for. So we don't have that dollar figure at this point in time, what that relief amounts to. A conservative estimate that we've provided for is 285,000. You know, it could be 285, it could be upwards of 325,000. Conservatively, 285 is the number we picked to roll with at this point in time, just given that we haven't received that annual billing statement yet. And budgeting conservatively, this is the number that we arrived at. So, you know, this is a significant reduction to the OPP costs that were projected to increase in 2025. And, you know, we're appreciative of the assistance that's been offered here.
Comments or questions? And I guess at this point, we don't know whether this is an annual relief or if it's just a one-time relief that would make the impact in 2026 similar to what we were feeling now. So all that information will be made available as it comes forth. Director Bedard?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Council. You know, we're optimistic those details will flow through when the annual billing statement is reduced, or not reduced, is provided, showing the reduction. Right now, we share your concerns. We don't know if this is a one-time only or if this is going to reflect the expected policing cost in 2026 and moving forward. You know, we're appreciative of the assistance that's been provided, but we look forward to receiving more details on how this will impact our, you know, our financial picture moving forward.
Not seeing anything further. Our next section.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. This section speaks to the consent agenda on today's council agenda. The next slide shows the 9 program changes that have been referred to this meeting from the previous council meeting. In total, these program changes total $423,000 of net tax impact. If we move to the next slide, each program change is detailed here. And then if we move to the next slide again, this slide factors in the base budget that we started with. So the base budget, to rephrase, that we started today with, not what we started with on November 6th. So the first line is the opening base budget that was detailed just a few minutes ago, the 1.2 million. We've included a potential reduction to the OPP costs. Again, that's estimated conservatively at 285,000. And then we've also added in all the program changes that have been referred to date. The cumulative effect of the base budget, OPP reduction, and program changes is a consolidated tax levy requirement of 1.35 million. When we look at how this impacts the average taxpayer with an assessed value at 497,000, the blended increase is 4.6%, and the annual increase in taxes payable is $203. So again, Council, with the information provided on the agenda today, the opening base budget, the potential reduction to OPP, and the program changes that have been referred to date, the average taxpayer will see an increase of $203 in 2025.
And I'll turn to council for any comments or questions on this. I guess my comment would be that the 6.87% is already below the direction that was given by council to find an 8, 10, and 12. So I think we have a good starting point here today. Not seeing anything further. Back to Director Bedard. Oh, sorry, Councillor Fisher.
Sorry, through to the mayor, would now be a good time if I had any questions or suggestions? Sorry, I'm losing my voice today. I'm sorry.
No.
I apologize.
Are the questions and suggestions based on the program changes that are being presented?
Based upon 2 programs that were presented in the capital projects.
So not the program changes today?
Not the program changes today.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So it was a question through you to staff. Excuse me, once again, I apologize. On the master plans for Parks and Recreation, 2020-25, just a clarification. It says debenture here, but if I remember correctly, was it was DC funded? I believe there was some confusion last time. I just wanted to have that clarified.
Director Bedard?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Councillor Fisher. That is correct. It is not to be funded through debenture. That is to be recovered from development charges.
Councillor Fisher?
Yeah. Am I able to call a vote on that at this point, or would I wait until later?
Sorry, I'm just needing clarification. So this is an additional item
That
for
I'd like to
reconsideration
yeah.
to be pulled. I will refer to the clerk.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. As there's no motion on the floor currently, Councillor Fisher can bring forward a motion if he wishes to do so right now.
Councillor Fisher?
I'd like to bring forward a motion to vote on that program change.
Sorry, Clerk Marshall?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. If I could just look for clarification that it be deferred to the 2026 budget or just removed or just fully removed.
And before I go to Councillor Alexander, is there an opportunity to bring that line item up?
Yeah.
Councillor Alexander, is that?
That was my question. Thank you.
Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Director Culver. Are we already in the middle of this master plan? Because I believe that we've done consultations and things so far.
Director Culver?
Thank you, Mayor. No, that's the line item that Councillor Fisher is referring to is related to developing a go-forward plan potentially with the Flossag property. So this would simply defer that or put it off, not enable it.
Councillor Garwood?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I'm going to call conflict on this item.
Councillor Thompson?
Through the chair to CO Smith. So if this gets defeated and this money stays within the development charges, is this not allocated to this already, or can it be reallocated, or where do these funds go? Do they just sit there in limbo now and aren't used? Because I understand that this is a use for these, this was the purpose of these funds.
CO Schmidt?
Through you, Mayor Coughlin, to Councillor Thompson. So Councillor Thompson, it's my understanding that yes, the Elmville Community Park Master Plan is currently funded from development charges. And so if the project doesn't proceed in 2025, essentially those funds would be available for 2026. So they would essentially stay in the reserve fund account, DC reserve fund account. They wouldn't be utilized for anything else unless council directed staff to consider to do so.
I'll just look for a seconder on that before we continue. Counselor Moore? I'll go back to Counselor Fisher.
Oh, thank you. I'll keep it brief. It's a treat for you guys tonight. I won't talk too much. So, yeah, I feel there's a better use of funds for this, particularly if we're doing a study to create parkland on land that really isn't ours. I feel that it's better that, excuse me, we keep the money in this fund, but reallocate it at a different time for other projects. So I think it would just be a better use of our money. I realize it won't make a difference on the budget, but I still feel it's the difference between good use of money and not good use of money. So.
Thank you for that. And I think that moving forward with this plan for this property has been something our residents have been asking for quite some time. I think the first time was when we started looking for a place for the splash pad. There is opportunity where this property could be better utilized, and whether that's, I don't know what the conversation looked like. There's been a lot of back and forth within the community about this, and I think that formalizing this and coming up with a plan that best suits the community in partnership with the Floss Agricultural Society is money well spent. If the concern is that this project be funded from the development charges, I do believe that there is still the Elmville Hydro Fund, which is funds that are to be used specifically for that ward or that area. So funding this, seeing this move forward is something that is very important. How it is funded, I think that it coming from development, there's development all across our municipality, and this is, I think, money well spent on a great use within the community. I do not want to see this pulled out. I think that there is an appetite from the Agricultural Society to have these conversations. They want to have this conversation. So by not moving forward with it, I think that it sends the wrong message to not only the Floss Ag Society, but our residents. Councillor Alexander.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. To Director Culver. So just so I understand, are we going to, I know we've been in discussions with the Floss Agricultural Society. Is the plan to move forward with the master plan prior to having an agreement with the Floss Agricultural Society, or kind of at the same time, or do we think we're going to get that agreement ahead of time? I'm just trying to see the big picture of this.
Director Culver.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. We currently have an agreement with the Floss Ag Society, this for use of their property relative to the arena space. So that's not anticipated to change by virtue of this exercise. What this exercise would do would allow us to dig in a little bit on collaborative partnerships going out into the future that would see, a potential only for development of the property more in line with the community park space that would see potentially the project or the property enhanced and do engagement with the community to sort of see how best the property can serve the community, but all within the auspices of a partnership with the Floss Ag Society. We have had some very preliminary discussions with some members of the Floss Ag group, and they've been positive. But again, we really need to kind of have a method to develop, a relationship that moves out into the future. And, that's what this was intended to do.
Follow on.
I agree with.
Follow on to Councillor Alexander.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Then just, I fully understand where we're going with this, but just so I'm clear, once we got to the point where, we were looking to potentially put funds in to develop the land or the park space or whatever it is, what that came out of this master plan, I'm assuming at that point there would be some sort of official agreement with terms and references or whatnot, similar, I'm assuming, to what we have with the arena, just knowing, I know the relationship is great now and it's a great volunteer group, but you never know what happens down the road. And when you're building and investing on land that's not yours, I just want to ensure we're in a place where we have the agreements in place that would be potentially necessary down the road.
Councillor Fisher and then Deputy Cabral.
So I hear everything that Mr. Culver's saying. I just feel that it seems to me we haven't had a fulsome discussion with the Floss Agricultural Society yet. I also, I think there's merit in it, and I think that definitely, I agree with the mayor, seeing this develop within the community is an opportunity. I don't see spending $42,000 right now. I heard it being referred to as a placeholder conversation last meeting. I think that I could even change my motion to defer it rather than fully remove it. But it seems premature as we're talking about it right now. It just seems like a lot of money for a conversation that's not really taking place as of yet. So I would like to see more conversation and more collaboration before we start committing $42,000 to it.
Deputy Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I guess my thoughts on it is I'd actually have to agree that I don't see us moving forward and committing funds to something that may or may not bear fruit. I think it's far more prudent and responsible to have an agreement in place with the Floss Agricultural Society that actually stipulates what we can and cannot do on their property. And then at that point in time, examine whether or not a master plan for recreational facilities over there is in the township's best interests. Floss Agricultural Society is made up of volunteers and it fluctuates. So I think to have an agreement in place, the memorandum of understanding certainly speaks to what is there now. Just from past experience with the tennis court there, we were going to do something. They were in agreement with it, and then it kind of dragged on a little bit. Next thing we knew, we were being advised that just pull the tennis courts out, pull the chain link fence out, and cover it over. So for me, I think really the walk should be to have an agreement in place first, and then spend money on that based on that agreement going forward as to what we may or may not be able to do on lands that we don't own. I know that we do maintain the tennis court there. I don't know whether that's inclusive in the memorandum of understanding that we currently have with the Floss Agricultural Society, but I think there has to be an addendum to that agreement that specifically speaks to what we might want to do down the road, what they are agreeable to and what they are not agreeable to. And then that's the point in time where I think you should be spending money going forward.
I see this exercise as determining what is possible on that land and what we are agreeable to and what the community wants to see there, so that council then can make a decision as to whether we would further invest in it. Not moving forward with the conversation keeps us where we are today, and having that land, in my opinion, underutilized in a partnership that we don't know what it could potentially be without investing and moving forward in it. I think that by deferring it to 2026, it just simply pushes it off. And again, if it's the concern that we're utilizing development charges that could be used elsewhere in the community, having this earmarked from the Elmvale Hydro Fund would allow it to move forward with no impact to other communities across the township. Deputy Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And I'm not disagreeing that there might be a use there, a mutual agreement, but I don't think we should spend any money until we know that we have the authority to actually put something on somebody else's property. It's akin to, I want to build a playground equipment on my neighbor's yard. I better have an agreement in place before I start making those plans. And that's all I'm suggesting here. Whether it comes out of next year, I think what the deferment should be is it should be deferred until Springwater Township has an agreement with the Floss Agricultural Society to actually move forward and some concrete parameters in place. And at that point in time, whether it comes from the Hydro Fund or whether it comes from DCs, I'm just saying that's when we step forward. I don't think we move forward until we have some type of an agreement in place to say that we're in a position to assess those lands and see what they could entail.
Councillor Fisher?
I see conversations as being free. I don't think we need to spend $42,000 to start to put together, excuse me, a framework of what that would look like. I definitely, I do like the idea of having a memorandum of understanding in place before we start deploying any funds, regardless of where it comes from. But I certainly think that staff and the Floss Agricultural Society can start putting together a framework before we start spending any money. I'm quite sure that there's enough talent in both organizations to do so.
Without belaboring it, I again disagree, but there is a motion on, sorry, CEO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Just a little bit of background that I can provide to members of council. So I have had a conversation with the Floss Ag Society probably 2 years ago with regards to this property. And at that time, Floss Ag Society essentially asked me, where's my master plan? And I mentioned to them at the time that it would be inappropriate for me to actually prepare a master plan on a piece of property that the township doesn't own. And so I think the idea here is to continue to have these conversations with the Floss Ag Society and have money in the budget to provide for the opportunity to, if they're agreeable, to actually develop a master plan where we could show them what could be utilized on that property to the benefit of both the Floss Ag Society as well as the township. So that's some of the additional background that I'm able to provide. Again, the idea here is to have the ability to, should the Floss Ag Society agree, that we actually go out and develop a high-level master plan as to what could be utilized on this property, again, to the benefit of all parties.
Before I turn to Director Culver, council will recall there are memorandums in place. There was, I believe, 3 or 4 separate memorandums that this council consolidated into one, and it was updated with the Floss Ag Society with their input and this council's input, and we put it in place this year. Director Culver.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Just if it provides an element of comfort and for whatever it's worth, when we met with Floss Ag membership members last week, on Thursday last week, it was discussed that a terms of reference surrounding the idea of this would have to be evolved or developed to sort of develop boundaries. And so just so that council is aware that it wasn't a fly by the seat of our pants program, it was intended to develop a structure where we both could, join into a commonly understood project. And use a $42,000 fund as a tool to develop landscape plans, to develop spatial accommodation requirements. It was it's just for clarity. I didn't want council to think that this was sort of an ad hoc program.
See anything, Deputy Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Just on that, I mean, these are DCs. I think if going down the road, something was to come to fruition and an agreement was to be arrived at, I mean, it would be just as simple as staff coming back with a report to indicate that, and then probably looking at doing the master plan at that time. The only thing I'm uncomfortable with is spending money on something that we don't know could or could not happen. So that's, I'd be happy to support it down the road when there's an agreement in place, but I can't support it as it currently sits. And I have to admit that, it's like people reaching out to members of council individually. We could say one thing and then come the meeting, our opinions and our minds are changed based on conversations with constituents and whatnot. So I'd like to have something concrete to base it on.
And for clarification, CEO Schmidt, should this line item be removed from the budget, what direction do you have then, or ability do you have then to continue conversations with the Floss Ag Society?
Through you, Mayor Coughlin. So as Director Culver already mentioned, discussions have already commenced with the Ag Society. So unless council is telling the staff to discontinue those discussions, I believe we would continue to have that. And to the deputy mayor's point, should we get to a point in the year or next year whereby we're in a situation where we've established an agreement or an understanding, we brought something forward for council's consideration. It could be at that time that if council's agreeable, that funds could be set aside for this type of project to move forward. So again, I think if you remove it from the budget, that obviously council's will to do so. However, unless council's suggesting to staff that stop communication with the Floss Ag Society, which I don't think is the case, I believe we'll continue to have those discussions, and at some point in the future here, we'll likely be back in front of council seeking further direction from you.
Fisher?
I completely agree with CEO Schmidt. I want you to keep having conversations with them. I want it to come back to council and really have a framework for what are they looking to have on their property, right? Again, $42,000 to begin a conversation, at least in the onset, I see as being free. So certainly engage with them as you would a CRA or another BIA, right? It doesn't cost us anything, and then bring it back to us when we have something to really discuss and really throw money at, right? So rather than doing it prematurely, I think.
Not seeing any further hands, council. All those in favor? Oh, sorry, Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I just want to be clear. We're voting on a deferral or a removal?
Councillor Fisher earlier suggested a removal.
I think we'd be removing it until it came back to us, right? So essentially, it would be a removal, but of course, it would come back at a separate time. Right? That makes sense. If it works either way for me, I really don't mind if it's a deferral. If that's how we have to classify it, I'm fine with that.
So that the capital project 2020, so 2020, so that means it was first from 2020-25 Community Park Master Plan be deferred to 2026. Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I'd like to propose a friendly amendment to that, and the amendment would be pending staff report regarding an agreement with Floss Agricultural Society. So at least that way, when it comes back, we're not just simply earmarking money. We still want that agreement or some report from staff coming back that we could do it. So I would just ask that that be included.
I'm just going to turn to the clerk. Is it typical that direction such as this be provided through budget, or would that be something separate?
It has
Okay.
been, yeah.
And so it's been amended that staff report back on a potential agreement with the Floss Ag Society. Not seeing anything further. Council, all those in favor? 3-3. Sorry. Council, all those in favor? And that has all those opposed. And the motion has been defeated. At this time, Councillor Fisher, you had a second item. Okay. So council, we are now able to move on to our consent agenda. So the below consent agenda includes all proposed program changes from the previous budget session. Should a member of council wish to further deliberate a specific item, amend or provide direction or vote against a specific item, they should request to pull the item for separate consideration. So at this time, I will turn to members for individual items to be pulled. Deputy Correll?
Mayor Coughlin, I would ask that all of them be pulled and dealt with individually. I would also ask that if it's possible for the Director of Finance to provide us, if they pass, what the impact might be on that number once again. That's the only thing I'd be asking. But currently going into this, it's the 6-point change, including all of these changes. Is that correct?
Director Bedard?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Deputy Cabral. The tax increase on the last slide that I presented, township tax increase 6.87%, blended 4.6, average annual increase $203 to the average taxpayer. This includes the base budget changes made thus far, the reduction to the OPP, as well as all program changes being considered today. So if there are program changes that are removed from the ones on today's agenda, this would reduce the tax levy, and we will be prepared to provide you with that running total, or preferably the total at the end of today's meeting.
And so council, we have a request to move through each individual. So we'll be requesting a mover and seconder for each of the items. So the first we have is program change 15. So I may have a mover and seconder for the fire dispatch service. I have Deputy Cabral and Councillor Thompson. That fire dispatch service be included for consideration in the final draft 25-26 budget. Comments or questions on this? Not seeing any. All those in favor? And that has carried. We'll move now on to number 16, RPF Operator 2 to be included for consideration in the final draft 2025-2026 budget. I need a mover and seconder for this one, please. I have Councillor Thompson and Moore. And we can open up for comments or questions. Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Could we have a recap of this particular position, please?
Director Culver.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. The operator 2 position is both what we call an inside and an outside position. So for a portion of the year, it's an inside ICE operator. And for the other portion of the year, it is an outside parks worker. So it's that's mowing, ice resurfacing, basically helping us look after the town's assets.
Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. More of a comment. I'm in full support of this position. I think it was documented last time. We have seen, unfortunately, the Elmville Arena close a few times over the past year, 3 times to be exact, and probably more that the public is not aware of. So I think this is an important position that we need to invest into to ensure that one of our most important assets remains open and operational at all times.
Not see. Oh, Deputy Cabral.
I'll pass, Mayor Coughlin.
Not seeing anything further. Council, all those in favor? And that is carried. Moving on now to program change 17, the tax and utility coordinator be included for consideration in the final draft 2025-26 budget. And I'd look for a mover and seconder on this, please. Councillor Thompson and Fisher. You can open up for a conversation. Any comments, questions? Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Just through you to Director Bedard. This position, do you envision this position as being 100% utilized in the first year, or do you see this position as being as things start to roll in? Because when I asked the question about the number of accounts that we had 2 or 3 years ago versus what we had today, it was not what one might consider an enormous increase. It wasn't like 100% more. So I'm just curious to know whether or not there would be other duties assigned to this individual as well.
Director Bedard.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Deputy Cabral. I do envision the position being 100% utilized in the moment. It will allow for us to be well positioned to address growth. So while, it may not be utilized in the sense of administering accounts, it will allow us to right size and be prepared for growth, including addressing policies and getting that framework ready so that as additional accounts come on board, we are well positioned to address that workload in the moment. With respect to water billing is complex in the sense that it's based on consumption, and it is very heavily involved in customer service. When we see Midhurst grow, we see a lot of landlord-tenant relationships where we are invoicing tenants. Um, tenants, tenanted properties transact more frequently than owner-occupied properties, and what we're finding is the number of accounts we're closing may not necessarily reflect the growth in accounts. They're two different metrics. And what I will say with respect to water billing, it's more hands-on. As I mentioned, it's based on consumption. We're finding a lot of time is spent educating our utility account holders with respect to what consumption means and how to investigate leaks and addressing that billing component. So we do spend a lot of time on customer service on the water side. This would allow us to provide that better customer service. Our current tax and utility coordinator focuses primarily on utility billing, and to complete the utility billing process, they're having to spend pretty much every weekend when they're doing that process to maintain it to the deadlines that we require. So it would build capacity within our current workforce, and it would allow us to have our workforce right-sized and structured the way we need it to address growth, so that we're not stumbling when that happens. We can get our policies and procedures right-sized to address the organization and the township that we need to be, and this position would allow us to get there.
Follow on?
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I do appreciate the comment with respect to dealing with the water customers. And I guess my question there would be, would this position provide you an enhanced capability to reach out to those folks whose meter readings are a little bit higher than they should be, to kind of suggest to them that maybe they need to take some action to see if there's a leakage in their house? I know that that has been an issue the last little bit on some people who say, hey, my water bill's super high. And I'm wondering if that's going to enhance our ability to kind of be able to contact those folks and tell them that maybe there's an issue with water consumption there.
Director Bedard?
Thank you, Mayor Colgan. Through to Deputy Cabral. What you explained is exactly what I envision this position, providing that service level enhancement to be. As I mentioned, we're stretched pretty thin just to get the water bills out on time, and an additional resource would allow us to perform those billing metrics that you mentioned and provide that educational component with respect to, we've noticed you have the increase in consumption. If you don't have a reason to explain for that, here are some things that we suggest. Your water softener could be leaking, or your toilet could be leaking. So put a little bit of food coloring in the toilet bowl and see if that filters through. Some of these things we can do a better job at, and this position would allow us to bring that capacity on board and better serve our residents.
I'll take the food coloring conversation on a sidebar. I'm very curious. So Councilor, are there any further questions on item 17 for Director Bedard? Not seeing any. All those in favor? And that is carried. Moving on to number 18, our development engineering technologists be included for consideration in the final draft budget. Mover and seconder for this, please. I have Councilor Garwood and Councilor Alexander, and I will turn to members of council for comment or question. Theo Schmidt, comment or question? All those in favor? And that has carried. Moving on to item number 19, Public Works Support Assistant. Mover and seconder for this, please. Councilors Thompson, and I missed the hand, sorry. Garwood, the Public Works Support Assistant, part-time to full-time, be included for consideration in the final 2025-26 budget. I can open it up for any comments or questions on this. Not seeing any. All those in favor? And that has carried. Program change number 20, equipment operator, be included for consideration in the final draft budget. A mover and seconder for the equipment operator, Councilors Thompson. And a seconder, Councilor Garwood. And at this time, any comments or questions on this position? Not seeing any. All those in favor? And that has carried. Program change 21, an economic development officer, mover and seconder on this, please. Councilor Thompson and Councilor Garwood. Councilors, are there any comments or questions on this position? Councilor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to support this position, and not because I don't believe in it, but because we have hired a consultant for $200,000 through the Economic Viability Ad Hoc Committee. And I'm just really interested to see what that consultant has to say first, and what the direction is for economic viability of our township. I do think that this is a valuable position once again. I just think that it might be next year, finally, that it gets approved once we have the information back from the consultant. I feel like we'd be double dipping just a little bit if we did that right away.
Anything, any additional comments for Councillor Thompson?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So, for me, I've heard that the last two budgets, let's look at it next year. Well, for me, it is next year, and I really appreciated Director Heron. He's a great sales guy. I thought he did a marvelous job when he made the presentation on it, and I think he's right there, you know, when he said that if we're going to expect a result next year, that not to expect one. It's kind of an investment. And so if we're just thinking about our own politics on our own skin, it probably is an easy thing to pass down the road for another year or another 2 years. But I see this as important, maybe not for us next year or the year after, but setting up future councils for success. I've spoke in favor of this for the past 2 years. I still am very much think it's something needed and necessary and will be very beneficial. And I think it's going to give an easier benefit. To put it into perspective, for me, in my taxes, I've calculated it's going to cost, well, actually, through the chair to Director Bedard, just correct me if I'm wrong with these numbers. So if my home is paying the average taxes in Springwater, an average home, I could expect an extra $10 on my tax bill next year, or about 80 cents a month, that this would cause the average taxpayer in Springwater for us to approve this here tonight, and to get moving on economic development and hanging out the sign that Springwater's open for business.
Thank you. Deputy Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I'm taking into consideration what Councillor Moore has said. I'm also taking into consideration our situation right now with respect to our neighbors to the south. I'm also taking into consideration the fact that this is an additional position. It's not a position that we're going to be cutting or maintaining. So I don't have a problem with deferring it to next year. And I think to suggest that we can look at every item and assign a dollar value to it. I mean, I don't know what it costs to plow my snow in front of my house, but I look at it a holistic approach, and it's the whole enchilada, not just little bits and pieces, you know, not the ingredients that go into that enchilada. So I'm just letting folks know why I won't be supporting it. I think the money that has been spent already to come back with a direction for this township to take is the first step towards economic development. This would be the second step.
Thank you. And before I do, I think that this step or this position is vital to both, not only the consultant that we've hired for that information, the negotiations that we're going through, but our existing businesses and the development, the economic development that we have existing, not just preparing for what's to come. I think that this position is years, as we've said, years and years and years behind, and I'm fully supportive of it again, and I'm hopeful that we can start this year. Councillor Garwood, and then I saw another hand, Councillor Thompson. Oh, Councillor Alexander.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And again, if we don't have the resources assigned and associated, then the information that we gather from spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on consultants is almost useless. In addition, again, not to rehash the past, because I've spoken about this quite passionately over the past 2 years and the past 3 budgets. We have an economic development strategy that is 15 years out of date. And again, that's also going to cost money and investment down the road. It's not on the table today to discuss, but hopefully it will be in the future. Again, we need somebody in place to be able to effectively not only work towards that future goal and that plan, but also implement the findings and the changes. Understanding that I come from a certain perspective in Elmville as the BIA representative, and not to say that this is only going to benefit the BIA, but again, that is the side that I'm coming from here, and we're hearing that. We're hearing businesses that are moving into our municipality, and not only again growing the business complement in Springwater, but also supporting those that are here today, and they're asking for help. They're saying, my neighbors in other municipalities have help. I have a second business in another community, and you should see what Midland, Wasaga Beach, and I can continue down the list are doing for me, are supporting me, because in turn my service or my business is supporting your residents. And that's what they're saying. We had an event just a couple days ago in Elmville where it was business focused, and we estimate a couple thousand people decided to shop local and roam our streets in Elmville, which is pretty neat. Supporting our local economy, injecting money in our municipality. But again, businesses end the evening and say, this is great. Wouldn't it be wonderful if I had some support from my municipality? And right now, the only support that we can give them is our incredible staff helping them as much as possible. But again, that's not their job. An economic development officer is something that has been identified multiple budget cycles now. And the businesses are tired of waiting, and I'm also tired of waiting and saying next year, because I could almost guarantee you what we're going to do next year is say, make it the next council's problem. And that's not appropriate.
I have Councillor Alexander Thompson Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So as I said last time, I actually really do like the position in how Director Herron has laid it out this year. I feel that it is much more conducive into what I see as an economic development officer, more so than what it had morphed into last term. My issue with it right now, and it's not just the $1 a month or whatever on our tax bills. When we look at our second biggest tax driver, it's labor costs. And every single time we add another position to this township, we drive that number up, which means our tax base is going to continuously go up year after year. So given where this lies on the priority list that staff laid out for us, it's near the bottom. So unfortunately, with the positions that have been approved, at this point, I can't move forward with it this year.
Councillor Thompson?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So through the chair to Director Bedard, could you just confirm with me that my math was correct? It's roughly $10 a year or 80 cents a month.
Director Bedard?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Councillor Thompson. Your math is correct on that.
Deputy Cabral? Follow on, Councillor Thompson?
Yeah, so I could propose other different funding sources. I'd be happy to give up my discretionary fund of $30,000. I see an economic development officer more important than council having a discretionary fund that we added to the budget a couple of years ago. I'd be happy to turn back the efficiencies to our communications budget of $30,000 and not do the direct mail flyer, which is 242% more expensive than in the local newspaper. So again, something that council has directed staff to do, which I feel adds no value to our taxpayers. So I'm disappointed again that 4 members of council can't have this vision or don't have the vision. And I would like to call again a recorded vote on this one, Mayor Coughlin.
Deputy Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Yeah, we've beaten it up a little bit, but I'm going to go back to what it did morph into before and what Councillor Garwood seems to indicate it should morph into again. It's not lost on me that the BIA gets a significant amount of revenue in order to do exactly the things that that the Elmville BIA has been doing, and they've been doing a great job at it. To know that a couple of thousand people walked the streets, and I will tell you that I was there too. I took a stroll down there. It was lit up. A number of the stores dressed themselves up, but that was done ad hoc, really. It wasn't something that was well promoted prior to, I'm going to suggest, November. And you still had a great turnout. And I mean, I think that speaks volumes about the BIA and what its capabilities are. It's also not lost on me that a number of the new businesses that have come into Elmvale have just simply come in on their own because it's a good place to do business. I'm disappointed that Councillor Thompson seems to feel that what some members of council think might be important is not. And I'm not suggesting that the economic development officer is not important, but I've given the reasons why I can't support it today. And I would just say maybe we should just vote on it.
I do have Councillor Garwood, and I do have comment as well.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and not to belabor the point here, but just circling back, just to clarify, the BIA does not receive a significant amount of revenue. The BIA operates on $22,000 a year annually. Deputy Mayor Cabral, I know you're aware of that as being a former member of that committee. Compare that to some of our neighboring municipalities who sometimes receive up to 30 times the amount of revenue to operate. Again, that's also not taxed to the general taxpayer through residential taxes. It's easy for us to sit here though and say that this can wait till next year because we don't know who can wait till next year. We have the luxury to say that, but some businesses don't. And again, that's not our business. It's not our responsibility to ensure a business is successful. But again, our residents expect a certain level of service, and whether that be what's available in the community. And this is not just an Elmville issue. This is across the board. And this is not only about the businesses that we have here today. Again, yes, that's been my focus, but primarily as well, talking about increasing, whether it be commercial or industrial taxation, to also support residents. That's going to potentially assist them, assist this municipality in future tax increases. Again, I think this council has done a good job of sitting here and trying to figure out a way to save folks money this year. And this council has done that. I haven't agreed with every cut, and I'm not going to. But respectfully, this council has gotten to a point where I believe the community is going to be relatively happy. The information has been presented to us that shows that even with bringing in or approving all of these program changes, we are still at a township increase of less than what this council asked staff to come back with. 6.87% township increase and a blended of 4.60 with all of those program changes. And that's a conservative number, understanding we don't have the exact costing on the OPP support from the province. So again, we have the ability to move forward and show our community that, hey, Springwater's listening. We are adding a few new positions, not all of them, but a few new positions. We just approved 5, while also investing in our business community and showing everyone that Springwater is open for business. So I understand, I can see the writing on the wall. I know exactly what's going to happen with this one once again for a 3rd year. I will try again next year, but to say it's disappointing is an extreme understatement.
Councillor Garwood, we do have a recorded vote called by Councillor Thompson. And again, disappointed that this is not, from what I'm seeing, it's not going to be moving forward. I do think that there is room this year to have that move forward. We are below the target that we gave to staff. I think it's also mindful that while this does fall to the bottom of the priority list isn't all the priorities, it's itemized, but also council removed the number 1 position that staff came together for. So to say that we're not going to approve this because it falls to the bottom, staff, senior management came together and chose what they felt was the most significant position for the corporation, and we removed that one. So I think that there is room in the budget for this. Our residents do need it. Our businesses need it, and our staff is asking for it. So council, at this time, I'll turn to Clerk Marshall for the recorded vote.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Councillor Thompson has requested a recorded vote on the following motion. That program change economic development officer be included for consideration in the final draft of the 2025-26 budget. When I call your name, please state how you vote. Councillor Garwood,
Yes.
Councillor Alexander,
No.
Councillor Thompson,
Yes.
Councillor Moore,
No.
Councillor Fisher,
No.
Deputy Mayor Cabral,
No.
Mayor Coughlin.
Yes?
That motion has been defeated.
Thank you. We'll move on to program change 22, our junior financial analyst to be included for consideration in the final draft budget. A mover and seconder for this, please. Councillors Fisher and Moore. And at this time, Councillor, are there any comments or questions? Deputy Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through you to Director Bedard. As I recall, Director Bedard, this particular position was to basically allow you to more or less focus on strategies, direction, and oversee your department rather than, I think, a number of calls and people. You were dealing as if you were dealing with front-facing counter on a lot of issues that were coming to your department. Is this position was the one position I think you identified that was going to be able to relieve you of some of that burden? Is that correct?
Director Bedard?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Deputy Cabral. It will assist in allowing me to look at the township from the financial strategy viewpoint that I should be dedicating most of my time to. That said, it's not freeing me up from customer service responsibilities or dealing with the public. It's better providing capacity within the budget and financial reporting team so that they are right-sized to provide the financial analysis that I can digest and we can expand to senior management as well as council. As I mentioned last time we discussed this, we're not doing a good job at getting our quarterly financial reports to council, and we're not doing a good job of getting those out on a monthly or quarterly basis internally, and it's really resource driven. That a lot of that was on the director's plate to handle. In my viewpoint, it's not appropriate for the director to be performing that boots on the ground work. That work is prepared at another level so that I have that independence when reviewing it, that I can review work critically that isn't my own. This position will assist with that financial reporting as we take on debt for the hub and the Craig Road. Accurate financial reporting is necessary for our financial institution. It's also necessary for Infrastructure Ontario should they be a debt holder, and it's also necessary for the province. We're in December of 2024 and we haven't closed off 2023 yet. This is concerning from my point of view. We need to, be in a better position to wrap up our previous year. And some of that is just the turnover in my position. If we have this position on board, it will take away some of those close or financial close processes from the director level, align it at the proper level in the organization so that these day-to-day functions continue, whether there's a director in place or not. The train doesn't stop whether I'm in the position or not. The other component this position will improve is our accounts receivable. Accounts receivable and accounts payable are managed by one person presently, and the work associated with paying township vendors and service providers has increased to the point where accounts receivable isn't our primary focus. We still invoice in a timely manner, but we're time constrained with respect to following up on invoices past due. So I can share right now, over 61 days, so past due over 61 days is approximately $1.4 million. If we were able to collect that amount 30 days sooner, we would receive approximately $14,000 in interest revenue just associated with moving collections further. So this position, again, would help out with our financial reporting. It would also help out with collecting invoices, bringing money into us sooner. which would allow us to reap the benefit of either holding that money in our account longer, generating better investment returns, or having that money available to provide payment to our service providers.
Follow on?
Thank you. Actually, follow-on is a question for CAO Schmidt through Mayor Coughlin. CAO Schmidt, I'm just curious, when it comes to grants and applying for grants and doing grant proposals, does that fall to each individual department based on what the grant is for? Or is there more of a burden on the financial department to look after some of those grants? I'm just curious because we know that they get filled out, but I really don't have a grasp of how that process works.
CEO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through you to Deputy Mayor Cabral. So Deputy Mayor Cabral, what I can tell you is finance does have the role to play in every grant that we apply for. That being said, typically it's the department that is kind of leading the project, if you will. That typically will be the one that kind of coordinates the grant, if you will. So we don't have it centralized per se. Again, each grant, depending on which program or services or infrastructure that's being promoted in the grant, it falls within that department, but finance always has a role to play within the grant application process. There's always a financial component that has to be provided for, and typically the finance department looks after that section.
Counselor Fisher?
I'm in support of this position. I think two good points. Cleaning up the accounts receivable and having it healthy on an ongoing basis is very important, but also to freeing up the director's time to focus on the quarterly financial reports. I think a corporation of this size, it's very important. I think we need to know where we sit financially outside of budget. It's equally as important as at budget time. So I'm in full support.
Not seeing anything further. Council, all those in favor? And that has carried. We'll move on now to our final program change, the EDHS Recreation Program Staff. A mover and seconder for this, please. Councilors Thompson and Alexander. That the EDHS Recreation Program Staff be included for consideration in the final draft of the 2025-26 budget. Comments or questions on this program change? All those in favor? Deputy Cabral.
I do apologize, Mayor Coughlin, but I do have a question with regard to this. This is for the additional, do we know roughly how many extra hours? I think Recreation Department did provide us a number. Is it a couple extra hours each night, or are we looking at the broader picture over the whole year?
Director Culver?
Through you, Mayor Coughlin, roughly 600 hours a year. So I think it works out to about 10 hours a week-ish.
Anything further? All those in favor? And that has carried. Council, before I move on to our tax support, our motion, our 5-point, the referral in general, is there anything further at this time? May I have a mover and seconder to refer the 2025-26 draft budget. Councilors Fisher and Moore, that the 2025-26 tax supported operating budget and capital budget as amended be referred to the December 18th, 2024 meeting for council for final approval. And that the 2025-26 water and wastewater base operating budget be referred to the December 18th, 2024 meeting for council's final approval. And that the 2025 tax rate bylaw be presented, including the county and education requisitions, as soon as the tax ratios have been approved by the county of Simcoe. Anything?
Recorded vote, please.
Oh, Councilor Moore, sorry.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Coughlin, to Director Bedard. Can you just give us a final number then, please, before we vote? Thank you.
Director Bedard?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to council. Reviewing all the program changes, there was only one program change that was defeated, the Economic Development Officer. Factoring in that reduction to the proposed budget, excuse me, the township tax increase is 6.39% presently. The blended tax rate increase 4.36%. The um, on the average residential property assessed at 497,000. The increase in taxes payable, $192.68, or $16.06 monthly.
Not seeing anything further, recorded vote has been called.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. The Deputy Mayor Cabral has requested a recorded vote. Does members of council need me to reread the motion? Nope. Okay, when I call your name, please state how you vote. Councillor Garwood,
Yes.
Councillor Alexander,
Yes.
Councillor Thompson,
Yes.
Councillor Moore,
Yes.
Councillor Fisher,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Cabral,
Yes.
Mayor Coughlin.
Yes.
That carries.
Moving on to our confirmation bylaw. Mover and seconder, please. Deputy Cabral, Councillor Garwood, that bylaw 2024-099 to confirm and adopt the proceedings of council at the special meeting held on December 3rd, 2024, listed here and be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. All those in favor? And that has carried. And then mover and seconder for adjournment, please. I have Councillors Fisher and Thompson that the special meeting of the Township of Springwater does now adjourn at 4:11 p.m. to meet again on the regular meeting on December 4th, 2024 at 6:30 p.m. All those in favor? And that has carried.